So just to start off, so you really get an idea how simple walking is. The basic aspect of walking is all you have to do is you take one foot and you put it in front of another. That's all there is to it. That's really all there is to it. Okay? You take one foot and it goes in front of the other and the next foot and the next foot and the next foot. And that's all there is to it. Okay? And that's the simplicity of it. The complexity of it is all the different phases for ourselves that go into all the different aspects that allow us to walk. We all walk in the same way, but we all walk with our own individual ways. And once we start walking, it takes quite a lot of difficulty or damage to stop us throughout our lives from walking. It can change if we have injury or if we have pain or if we have disturbances in the muscular, the skeletal, or the nervous system. But on the whole, walking is very hard once it's really developed fully to eliminate. So then we can actually go on to look, when we talk about it being complex, to see what it is that we can do as adults that have developed walking and who are walkers, what it is that we can do to either know how and what we do in our own walking better, and as well, once we have that, how we can make changes or improvements on that function, that ability. Some of the changes will be very subtle, and some of the changes will be a little bit broader or can be quite large. So the complexity of it is, how do we find out the inner workings of all these details that go into this very simple aspect of one step in front of another? And basically, if you look into it, it's called a gait cycle. And it's a cycle because it repeats itself. It's something that's repetitive, automatic and repetitive. I just say a few terminologies so we understand what we'll deal with. So the first thing, and as I said, that walking is simple, we deal with what's called stance. That means how you're on a leg, and we look at how something swings so you can take a step. A stance basically is something that you have to keep weight on top of, okay? It would be called a loading phase. Some look at it as the loading phase. And in each of the things we'll actually look at is very interesting. We'll always have three different aspects, okay? So we have sort of a preload, then when we're really loaded, and then the post-load that we have. And that's on the foot that you'll be standing on. Okay, so this would mean if I'm taking something, it will be the foot that I'm on, how I come onto it, and how do I get off of it. And then the next aspect is what happens to the leg that I'm not on. How does that start? And then how does that go into a swing? And that also has three different parts to it, sort of the beginning of it, the middle of it, and the end phase. So we have the stance, and we have the swing, and the aspect of how you come onto a leg and how you swing the other leg. The other aspect of it is how we deal with being on a support of two legs and how we deal with being on a support of one leg. And that's basically the whole issue of walking in a nutshell. It can be delineated much, much further into many more aspects, but those are the basic that we will look at, and we'll look at all the inner workings of how we get there. I will break it down, so we need to see what are the different directions that we need from different parts and how they interact with each other. And once we can feel those and know those, then it actually becomes very interesting to see all the different aspects of the different phases and how our little individual aspects can change accordingly. So some of the things that I will use so that you can feel differences is aspects of the directions that we go, forward, back, side, and turning, how we deal with distances between our feet, okay, and our legs, how important repetition is so that you can do something and clearly sense it or feel it or get clear somewhat of what you're doing, different rhythms that we have while we're doing these things, because walking is much more difficult when it's very slow. We each have an individual rhythm of a normal gait that we have, and then of course, when we speed up or when we try to rush or when we run, all the different aspects that we relate to that. I will go through some basic things with you, and I will demonstrate afterwards how some of the basics that I'm showing now will fit in and how we'll be able to see how this will develop during the 4 days that I will teach. For those of you that are practitioners, because this workshop is divided into two parts, part for the general public, and that will be that we'll just deal with the standing and the walking and looking into this. Then there's the second half of the workshop, seminar advanced training for people that have gone through training. We call them practitioners of different methodologies that relate to hands-on work. And the second part will be how to use these elements that we're looking to in the standing and completely directly relate to them individually to a person on the table. That's where we're going. That's where we're headed. It's a very rich topic. Anybody that deals with themselves when they get older, if they do gym or they do running or they do swimming or they do all sorts of, they want to know, how can I walk sometimes, I want to get it better in all different ways. People that deal with individuals in therapeutic learning situations certainly encounter that constantly. Anybody that's dealing with rehabilitation of any kind also deals with it. Okay, certainly if you deal with children, this is a whole nother topic because it deals with developmental, the aspects of developmental walking. All right, so we can start in standing. I will demonstrate, I'll give the instructions as clearly as I can. If it's not clear, please ask, and then I can also clarify things after every section that I'll do. So please stand up. Okay, and just for yourself, just standing, just notice how you're standing, whatever that means for you to notice. So there's so many things to notice. I won't go into them. You notice for yourself so that when we do something and I say, can you feel a difference? Maybe you'll be able to notice something has changed in this particular situation. And just take a few steps. Try not to do it slowly, just like a normal walk around, and notice whatever it would be for you that you would happen to notice when you walk. So if something changes, it might be something you also want to change, or just something that you know about yourself in walking. Okay. And that's what we'll do after we'll do a few of these aspects. We'll come back, we'll check how we stand, and then we'll walk. Now, what's interesting that as we'll go along is some of the things after you do them, maybe you don't feel them in the standing. Maybe you just feel them in the walking or the opposite. Some of them you look for it in a specific part of the body, and some of it all of a sudden you notice, wow, it affects the entire way I walk in places I didn't expect. So the first thing is, how do we get in if we're standing on two legs to start to take a step forward? And that's basically what I'm going to focus on in the next period of time, because that's what we need to know so we can go into the gait cycle. Okay, so if you're standing on two legs, the basic thing is, how do you get yourself onto one leg so you can take a step? Okay, so before we do that, and I show you, what I need to show you is one aspect on the skeleton so that you can find it for yourself. So there's two basic parts for people that don't know. This is a part that everybody can feel on the hip. It's a bone on the outside, the greater trochanter. And you can see where it sits sort of on the side. Some it's wider, some it's thinner, some it's very protruding, some it's less. And then there's this upper part of your pelvis, okay, that you can feel around. And then if you put your hand on the trochanter and you put, you make your fingers so that they get wide so you can feel the two parts, and then come in a little bit below that, sort of you're in between where the trochanter is and this part of your pelvis. There's a lot of tissue and muscle right over there, okay, in this area between, okay? So, come and you stand. And what I want you to do is, I want you to put your hand on this area of the trochanter on your right side, okay? And what I want you to do is we're going to shift our weight. And what I want you to do when you shift your weight is I want you to shift your weight so your pelvis goes over to the right and your head and your upper body go over to the left, and just return to the middle, okay? So the pelvis goes over to the right, so it really goes outside of your leg, and your upper body goes the other way, to the left, okay? And return just to the middle. And notice what it feels like. You really have to push into this area. When you push into it and you go to the side, notice if it gets harder or if it gets softer, and then you return to the middle. And you just do that 2 or 3 times. Head and upper body to the left, pelvis, so you feel the shifting outside of where your leg is. You see, it's way over where my foot would be. It's to the outside, and then I return. Okay. Everybody has that. That's very clear. Very good. Wonderful. Now what I want you to do, so we start to see what we need to do to get onto the leg, is go over again, take your pelvis to the right, the head and the upper body to the left, okay? And now try to find your way so that you stay so that you come onto your leg and your head comes over more to the right, okay? A little bit over. And when you'll do this, you'll feel a change in this, what you feel in this musculature between this trochanter and the top of your pelvis. And then you come back just to where you stood. You do it again, take the head over to the right, the pelvis to the right, the head over to the left, okay? And then you push yourself so that you come with the head comes all the way over to the right. So you feel you actually stand on the leg. Now, what happens when you do this, you please find that when you do it and you come over so you feel you're on the leg, your left heel will come off the floor. Not the whole foot, just the heel. And then you return with the heel onto the floor. All right? So let's do that a few times. You take the head over to the left, pelvis goes to the right. You feel into the trochanter. Your whole upper body comes over to the right, and you're on top of that leg. The left heel is up, and then you just come back down. And repeat that a few times. And then return. Okay. Okay. Make sure the pelvis shifts its weight to the outside. Head over to the left. Then you bring your whole self. You feel you're over this leg, even the head a little bit more to the right if you can. So you feel like you really step into the leg. And then you come back to the middle. One more time. And then come down. And then just stand. And see if just after doing that simple thing, you feel a difference how you stand on one leg than the other. Maybe yes, maybe no. Take a few steps and see if that did something to how you feel you're walking. Okay. Some will say they feel maybe could be that you feel your knee is lighter, or they push into the floor a little bit more, etc. Let me just get a view of the gallery so I know the pulse of my group here. Now look, who noticed anything different for themselves after doing that first small little simple exercise? Great, excellent. Thank you so much. All right. So let's continue. And we're going to go through a little bit more on the same leg and the same size. So I said we look at distances. So in terms of our walk, we all have a specific distance that we always keep our legs. And it's a certain aspect. You'll always recognize somebody from that. Now, let's try to take the legs a little bit closer together. Very simple. Keep the feet parallel, and we'll do the same exact thing. So put your hand on the trochanter. Head will go over to the left. Pelvis goes out to the right. And then you have to bring yourself onto this leg. The heel will lift, and you'll notice it has a very different, what you'd call a trajectory, an angle of motion, a leverage aspect, and what you feel in the left leg as well, and then return. And we repeat this 4 or 5 times. Just easily, slowly, however you want to feel it, whatever rhythm you want to do. Make sure you use your hand to signal yourself so you can feel when these tissues that many of you will feel they change what they feel. Some will say they feel harder, some they feel softer, and then return. Okay, that's 2. And we go over, easy. Doesn't have to be like an exercise. Feel how you do it. Feel how it makes you really stand onto the leg. And come back. And again, 1 or 2 more times, easy. You can repeat, see what it feels like to shift the weight with the distance. And then come back and go over and come back down. Wait a moment. Same thing, head and upper body. The left pelvis way over. And then come on, take the head over to the right, stand on the leg, heel comes up, and then you return. Okay, go back to your stance, what you feel. Notice if that makes the difference any larger or smaller, the 2 legs. Take a walk, see what that does to you. Some will say they feel the push off a little bit more, knee a little bit lighter. Very good. Okay. Okay. Come on back. Do one more on this side. So we have our, you'll be able to notice once you start to do differences in distance, what happens is you get more of an awareness, you call it, or a focus or an idea of how you actually, what's your distance. Let's take a tiny bit wider distance. Doesn't have to be major. You can look, you see my normal stance is about one of these planks on the floor. If I go wider, I sort of take 2. We do the same exact thing. Look, off to the side, left, pelvis goes to the right. Now I got to bring myself all the way over. It's a much longer distance. I'll lift my heel more, feel I'm really on the leg, and then I come back down, heel back down into the middle. And again, over, left, over to the right, and I come back down. And a few more times. And just make it easy. It doesn't have to be so clear or specific. If some of you are wondering if you're doing it correctly or incorrectly, however it is, as long as you shift your weight and shift your weight that you feel you step onto the leg and the heel comes up, it's great. Come back down. One more time. Over. Shift. Feel what it does in this area. And then come back. Stand in your normal stance and see how that is on your legs. Some of you will feel it, the whole side maybe feel different between one side and the other. And walk around and see what that does to you. Okay. Now, we'll do the other side and I'll explain why this is so important, this particular direction. Okay. So let me just get a view of my group for a moment. Who, after doing those 3 directions, also feel that the walking itself starts to change, or you can feel the difference in either your press or your knee or the standing on the leg. Okay. Does anybody have a question? Is that clear for everybody? Okay, great. Good. I can continue on. All right. No, let's go back to speaker. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now come back, stand in your regular stance, and just take your pelvis over now to the left, head goes to the right. Just do this and return. Okay, just the side so the pelvis shifts to the outside. Your foot, you see it's not over my foot. Put your hand on the trochanter, above the trochanter, spread the thumb, find those tissues so you feel how they get hard. If you're not finding them, then you either have to go a little bit more forward on the pelvis or a little bit more backward on the pelvis in that area. Okay. Head over to the right, pelvis to the left. Okay, so you feel how you shift that weight. See, a lateral movement, we call it. And now, keep that. And now what we want to do is we want to come back. So we have to sort of push into the right leg to feel what changes between the pelvis and this trochanter. My right heel is off the floor. Can you see that? Is that clear? See, I do it, both heels on. And then I come, my whole upper body changes. So I feel like I'm standing on my left leg more. My right heel comes off the floor. And then you just come back down to the middle. Okay, we'll do it a few times. Shift to the outside, pelvis to the left, head to the right. And then feel what changes in between the pelvis. And why we do that is so that we can get an understanding that it's not about shifting the whole body and the whole trunk around. It's something that has to do with the relationship of the head and what's called the pelvis hip joint area. The whole trunk has to move and return. Again, pelvis to the left, head to the right, hand on the trochanter, and then come over. Feel how the heel lifts. Everything goes over to the left, so you really feel you're over on the left. Don't shift it too much, otherwise you don't come over the leg. You want to feel that you stand on your leg and then come back down. One more time. Everything, take the pelvis to the left, head and upper body to the right, leave that, and then come on to the leg. The heel comes up, and then you put it back down. And wait a moment. Okay, so we'll do it exactly how we did it the last time. See now that you start to do it on both legs, what the change you might feel in the stance. When you've noticed that, take a few steps, walk around. Different people have different aspects that they've dealt with, possibly of injuries. People have had sprained ankles, injuries of the knee, spine, everything possible. So you just take yourself and notice what's different in each leg. Come back. Let's bring the feet a little bit closer, okay? So it's not completely together, but it's definitely a smaller stance. Keep the feet parallel, okay? And again, shift the weight to the outside. You can try it a few times to feel the difference here because it's a very different angle once you bring the base closer. Outside, elbows out, and then into this area, the trochanter, and then find your way up, head over. You see, I'm really on top of this leg. Once I'm there, that I'm standing on it, I don't need more. Okay, then I'm really on one leg. Next thing we'll have to deal with is how you get the leg totally off the floor. And then return, do it again, pelvis to the left, head to the right, into the trochanter, come on to the leg, feel what it's like in this area, what changes, and how it changes all the way to the floor, and return. And then one more time will be plenty actually for the introduction there, and then come and come back, over and return, and stop and wait, come back to your stance, whatever width it is. Notice what that does to your uprightness or your feeling on the floor or the legs, and then walk. It's always interesting after we do this on one leg or the other, if you can notice which leg you start with, if you always start with the same, or after doing a few of these things, the leg that you start with changes. Okay. Come back, and then let's take a wider stance. You can either start by taking one leg out or the other leg out. You'll see you'll choose one, and then keep a wider stance. I'm going to do like 2 of the planks. And again, pelvis out to the left, head and upper body over to the right, and then the heel lifts. Feel it into this trochanter, between the trochanter and the pelvis, this area, and then you return. And again. And do it for yourself. You can notice your breathing and whatever else you want to pay attention to as you do this. Onto the leg, and return. And 2 or 3 more times, easy going. Okay. Now, why do I do it in terms of a repetitive way? Is in a certain sense, it's very good because all these aspects of the directions that we will have of the pelvis, they go into the cycle of walking, which is repetitive and has a specific rhythm. Okay, there we go. And then come back down. One more time. Over. Come all the way on. Heel goes up. Stand onto the leg. And return. Stand. Come into your normal stance. And there you are. Okay. And walk around and see what that feels like. Okay. Okay. So that's the first thing that we will do. I want to just see the group for a moment, and then walking. Take a gallery view. So who found that after doing both sides, you can feel a change? Some will feel it in the stance, some will feel it in the lightness of the knees, but you definitely can feel that something happens as you do this. That's excellent. That's wonderful. All right. We'll do one more thing just in the shifting, so you get a little bit more of a feel how important these basic directions are. Then we'll go into another direction that we have to look at in the shifting. So come back one more time. We'll just do one different aspect here. Because when we will look into the different phases of the gait cycle that we're preparing in this way, what we want to see is how different aspects or parts of ourselves, of course, will affect so that we can notice how we hold ourselves and which places, if we make a change, will make a greater difference for ourselves. So the basic places are in the feet themselves, foot and ankle, the knees, the hip joints, shoulders and arms, head and neck, okay? And then, of course, all aspects of the spine, basically the whole body. But if we look at the arms, the shoulders, ankles, knees, and hip joints, okay? And the most basic is the head. So at the moment, we'll do one thing with the feet, then we'll look at something with the head, and we'll do a different direction that we need. So in this basic stance, take your right foot and turn it to the inside. little bit, not completely, but significant enough that it's not too drastic, enough that you can feel your stand. The other leg will stay where it is. Go back, put your hand on the right side of your pelvis above the trochanter, and we do the same thing we did. We'll just do one of these directions of the feet and shift over so the weight goes more to the outside of the pelvis goes to the right, head goes to the left, and then stay and then try to bring yourself over onto the trochanter again, over onto the standing leg, excuse me. So you feel it above the trochanter, and then return. And notice this one small change of the position of the foot, which is with the hip joint area, makes a big difference of how you can get yourself on the leg. So once again, head over to the left, upper body, pelvis to the right, and then come up over onto the leg. And see, changes the whole direction, or how you have to keep yourself in a forward direction. Return. One more time. We'll do only 3 times here. Head over to the left, pelvis over to the right, and then come on to the leg. Head over to the right, stand on the leg, come back down, and then come back and just straighten your leg out. Notice that what that does to the standing of the leg. Wait a moment, take a few steps, and notice what that does to the direction of your knee and the push off of your foot. All right, so you can see that that makes a very big difference of how we shift our weight and get onto the leg. Can people notice that from this one change? All right, very, very good. So in any of these aspects that we're looking into, actually, there's always more or less, just like in the gait cycle, there's these phases. In terms of the directions that we have or distances we have, the basic amount is 3. We're not going to look into the 3 directions of the foot now. We'll just do the same thing on the other leg to keep it symmetrical. Turn it to the inside, your left foot. Okay. Shift your weight once again, pelvis over to the left, head and upper body over to the right, hands between the trochanter and the pelvis, and then you shift yourself to come up onto that leg. The right heel comes off the floor, okay? Some people will find, oh, it's a little, my head doesn't do it the same way, or my back, I can't get over the leg the same direction. That depends on your knee and your ankle. Come back, heel down, wait a moment, pelvis to the outside, upper body to the, pelvis to the, to the left, upper body to the right, and then bring yourself head over to the left. Feel what it's like between the trochanter and the pelvis. Feel what it's like to get yourself onto the leg in this way. Right heel comes up, come back to the middle. We'll do it just one more time. So you go over with the pelvis to the left, head over to the right with the upper body, and then over onto the leg. Wait a moment, and then come down, straighten the leg. So the feet are in your parallel position. Start. Notice what that feels like to stand in terms of what it does to your stance. Take a few steps, okay? And see what that does to the walking, okay? All right. So I just explained one aspect related to this, why I'm starting with the feet in this particular way and looking at these distances. Because anything that we do in terms of a step, there is a distance that we will take in the step that's automatic for us. It's also the distance that we'll have between our legs. It doesn't mean that we don't step in different directions or we need to, or that we don't turn, or anything that we do in related to going forward or down to the floor or going up. So we need to look at that there's different, the main thing is whatever it is that you're going to do, you have to get yourself so you can stand on the leg that you're going to make the stance on, because that's one of the phases of the walking, so that you can be over the leg. And now how we do that is a very interesting question. And we will look at that into quite a bit as we go into the phases. But the basic thing is, how do you get onto the leg so that you can actually lift the other leg? Okay. Now, there's many methodologies that look into this and they check this. They want to see how you stand on one leg and how you balance, etc. But this is the basics. So of the directions of the lateral movement and coming onto your head over the pelvis and leg on one side so that you can begin to stand on the leg and then see what you're going to do in terms of going either forward or backwards. Okay? So let's continue. All right? So I'm going to turn to the side for this. I'm going to keep my feet in a parallel position. Okay? And what we want to do is now we want to look at a different direction. We want to look at the forwards and backwards direction. Okay? There's three basic directions that will take care of that anything to do with the walking, which is the sideways directions, this lateral direction. There's the forward and backwards direction. And then there's the turning direction that has to do with how we actually do the, related to the step. So we're going to look a little bit into this forward and backwards direction. And basically how we'll do it is simple. We'll try to keep it just like I did with you a moment ago, so that we're going to take the pelvis backwards and the head a little bit forward. And then we're going to take the pelvis a little bit forward and the head a little bit backwards. Don't be extreme. Don't start to do huge movements. It's not about increasing your range of motion. So basically, the pelvis goes forward evenly on both legs. Pelvis goes backwards, head goes forward. Okay? That's the basic directions that we want to look at, and we'll need that further. I'll explain it later. The third way to do this in terms of a direction, actually, is how the head doesn't move in space. So you can put your finger on your top of your head, okay, when you'll do it. I just demonstrated. And basically the head will stay on top and the pelvis will go however you do it, forward and back. And there's many ways to do that. So let's start off. I'm going to stand in the front position now and basically just do the movement. Just head forward a little bit, pelvis a little bit backwards, pelvis a little bit forward, head a little bit back. Just do that a few times.
There was a question, knees straight or slightly bent?
Knees are straight. Everything is with knees straight tonight. Okay? Everything knees straight. Great question. Thank you. Appropriate. Okay? And now you can put a finger on the really top point of your head and see what it's like to keep this point totally sort of like you'd hang the skeleton and the pelvis comes forward. Some of you will shorten yourself. Some of you will do a very different, extend yourself, make yourself smaller and taller. However you do it, however you can feel it. Some feel they can do it. Some will shift the whole body forward and push with the heels or the toes. All fine. Okay? Great. Now, what we want to look at now is three directions of the head, three basic directions of the head in this forward-backward plane. And then we can explore for ourselves later in the workshop exactly how this relates to our own personal, what you'd call, way that we hold ourselves. So there's always a distance we keep between the chin and our chest, the back of the head and the top of the spine. So what we can do is say that's one. That's our position. It's like in the standing. You have your stance, your width. Now, if you try to just take your head a little bit forward and return, that's all. So that would be the chin a little bit more forward. Okay, some will collapse the chest. That's fine. Now, it doesn't have to be a big movement. It's a small little movement. And then the third movement would be that the chin will come back as if somebody's bringing their hand to your face and you want to go a little bit away. Okay, I'll exaggerate it. So you get that's the forward. That would be the backward with the chin closer. Okay, that's the forward. That's the back. Okay, so just do that 2 or 3 times so you know what the direction is. Very good. All right. So now, what we go into now is what we did before was we took the head. We didn't talk about it. We just said head forward, pelvis backwards, head backwards, pelvis forwards. And then we kept the head on top and the pelvis swinging underneath. Now what we want to do is you take your head 1 or 2 or 3 times a little bit forward, and then you leave it. But watch me so there's no misunderstanding. So I leave myself a little forward, and with my chin a little bit forward, I do the same rocking motion so that the pelvis goes back, and my head with the chin forward will come forward. And then I keep my head forward, and I push the pelvis forward, and my head goes a little back. So I keep that aspect that my chin stays forward, and I do this sort of forward, backwards rock. Okay, it is basic. All right, very good. and come back and just stand. Okay, so we equally distributed our weight on both feet. All right. Now, do a few more movements of the chin forward and then back. So as if your head is pulling away from somebody who will put their hand in front of you. And now stay and watch me for a moment so you see the same thing. The chin stays close, not extreme. And I do the same thing. If you need to, you can match the distance. You can put your fingers there to make sure it doesn't change. And then you just pelvis back and the head forward with the chin close. Pelvis forward, head back with the chin close, and then you do that rocking, okay? And notice that both of your hip joints and pelvis come forward. However you do it, some will maybe flex and extend more, and maybe not. Yes, we will see when we go into the step phases. Very good. And just stop that. And without doing anything now, see what that's like to go forward and backwards with your head in your original position. Some will feel, whoo, it feels a tiny bit different. Yes, we'll leave it at that. Let me see what that did for people. Take a walk around, see what that does for your walking. And then we'll see how to include it. That's good. We found a nice difference in how they stood after that in terms of the forward-backward motion. That's great. Okay, let's continue. All right, speak. So now we've done two basic directions, right? We've done these movements, okay, and coming onto the leg, but it's the same direction of the pelvis. And we've done forward and backwards motion, and we've explored three directions of the head, and with the pelvis actually, with the head staying completely on top. Let's see how we make a combination that goes into using these directions, the use of the head, all right? So what we need to do is, let's go back to the hand over the trochanter, between the trochanter and the pelvis, shift the weight of the pelvis once again like we did, head to the left, pelvis to the right, and then come over onto your leg. Let's do this 3 times, and then we're gonna stay here on this leg, okay? So again, come back down, heel down, head over to the left, pelvis goes to the right. Feel what you have to do in this trochanter between the pelvis. So it's one piece, the whole upper body, even though your head could hang if you like, and then come down. The third time, we're going to stay on top of this right leg. Head over to the left, pelvis goes to the right. Come, feel what you do in between the pelvis and the trochanter. And now stay with the heel in the air, left heel in the air, over this right leg. And now what we want to do is we want to take the pelvis forward just on this right side. Both sides will work, but we're going to be standing on this leg. The head will come forward, the same thing, and a little backwards. So it's not extreme, still with the knees straight. And you can keep your hand on the trochanter area, notice what that feels like, and just go forward and back. That's good. Excellent. 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 1 or 2 more times. You can see if you want to go farther back or farther forward, but it's really not necessary. It's just that's good. Come back. And after doing that, see what it feels like to be on the 2 legs. And walk around. Very good. Okay. Now, let's make it so it's easy. We'll do it a little bit different than we did it when we did the distances between the legs. We'll do the other side now, and then we're going to see how to put the movements of the head in. So you'll see how to put in different elements will build one on top of the other. Okay? So once again, come to your stance. Find the left side of your pelvis, trochanter, upper part of the iliac crest, and then in between, shift your way to the pelvis to the left, head over to the right, and then come up onto the leg, head over to the left, so you feel you're standing on the left leg, right heel comes up, and come back down 3 times, and then we'll stay there. So we go over pelvis to the left, head to the right, and then come up on top, heel up onto the left leg, heel down, come back to the middle. Third time, and then we'll stay onto the left leg. So pelvis to the left, head, upper body to the right, head and upper body over to the left, standing on the leg. And that was on top of feeling like we're really on this left leg. Right leg is lifted from the heel, and head goes a little forward, pelvis a little back. Make sure it's the whole pelvis forward, head a little back, but you don't do anything. Head is just in the way it is. So it's just rocks back and forth. You can put your hand on the trochanter. You can also put it in the front of the front part of the pelvis. You'll see it also moves in that area. Okay, I'll show it on the skeleton so you can see it. We had the hand here. And then when you take the leg and you swing the pelvis in the forward backwards motion, if you put your hand in front of this ridge here a little bit, you can also feel there will be a change here. Okay, is that clear? Clear? Okay, okay. So where were we? We were here. That was over. You come over onto the left leg, and then you go forward and backward, and you can put your finger, and you'll feel in both those areas there's some change. Excellent. Come down, stand, walk around, and see what that does to your walking. Some will feel actually, after doing such a simple thing, the arms actually start to swing more, the shoulders move. Some can actually feel, let me see if people felt, if you take a nice walk, if you feel who noticed a different swing in their arms after that? Great. Interesting how this simple aspect makes a very big difference when you explore it very specifically. Okay, I'm going to do one more thing now. I know for the introduction, I really want to give you an idea. And then after I show this next thing, I'll show how it all will relate into why it's important to start with this so that you can understand what I will do in the 4 days. So we come back, we'll do the same thing. And now we're going to just look at 2 movements of the head the way that we just did it. So we're going to go over, pelvis is going to go over to the right, head to the left. Then you come up over onto the leg. I have to turn a little bit now. So you can see my heel is lifted. And then what you want to do is what we just did a moment ago, we rocked forward and back. Now what you want to do is take the chin a little forward, stay with the chin a little forward, and then do the rocking, okay? Okay? Do that 2 or 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, back and forth. And then you'll come back down, okay? I'll wait for you all. Good. Same thing. Pelvis to the same side. Head over to the left. Then you bring yourself up onto the right leg. Turn so you see me. Then you want to bring the chin a little closer. Okay? And then the same thing. Keeping that distance. Forward and back. You can put your hand where I showed you in terms of the front of the pelvis and near the trochanter, these 2 areas. Great. Then come, stand, and see what that does for your feeling of standing on one side. And take a walk and see what your walking is like now. Right. Good. Let's just do the other side. Pelvis is going to go to the left, head upper body to the right, head onto the trochanter, bring yourself over, right heel will come up and come down. We'll just do it 2 times and then stay on the left leg. Pelvis to the left, head over to the right, and then bring yourself up. So you feel in the area of between the trochanter and the pelvis, heel comes up. And then let's take the chin forward, okay? And go forward and backwards because we already did. And keep the chin forward a little bit. It doesn't have to be extreme. Stay forward and just rock everything forward and back. Okay? Like one piece. That's good. Excellent. Come back. Stop. Wait. And last time. Pelvis will go over to the left, head, upper body over to the right. Then we come on to the left leg. head over to the left. Stay there, bring the chin closer, and you go forward and back, okay? Try to make myself visual. The main thing is this right leg is really passive now. Could be with the knee is very soft, this point, and you can feel from the front, chin closer. I'm in stand. And see what it's like to stand. And just do the basic rocking that we did of the forward and backwards motion and on both legs. And notice, is that a little bit expanded or easier over your heels? You feel it clearer over the pelvis in the forwards and backwards motion. Okay, and then walk around and see what you feel like. Okay. So who noticed after doing that, when they just did the basic movement of the forward and backwards, that if there was more swing in the pelvis or they could feel themselves more over the heel, made a big difference. Very, very good. Excellent. I see people walking quite a bit differently. So that's all I'm going to show you in terms of a demonstration that we do. But the basic idea that I was trying to elaborate on and why we will need those movements is we need to see how to get ourselves onto the leg that we're going to stand on, right? Where our heads are going to go. There's an aspect of the movements of the head we'll have to look into. We just looked at it forward and backwards and the trunk with the head. But if I'm going to take a step, I have to come. So the basic movements I have to be able to look at is how I'm going to get myself onto this particular leg, okay? That's the first thing we did. And when I take the step, where am I? Am I inside? Am I outside? Am I over? But then it has to propel me forward. And these are the aspects that we have to look at, and we have to see what this has to do with the movements of the heels, the movements of the knees, and what's called the rockers. There are different rockers that we deal with in terms of the motion. And we'll look into very specifics about these things and using many more directions that we did. We have to look into the shoulders. We have to look into the rotational components. And then we can actually start to feel these different asymmetries that we have in how we hold one leg, how we hold the other leg, what we do differently in the pelvis, in the lower back, and the spine, and how to use this actually specifically for ourselves to improve. We have to look a lot into what happens. We didn't deal with anything that will relate to the lifting of the leg for the step and all the components of the foot that goes into the swinging motion. That's a whole aspect. How do you get to the swing and how this happens automatically? Then we want to see in terms of when we do the walking, of course, you have the rotation between the shoulders. So we have the motion that goes on in the spine. That will be done in the 4 days for sure. Okay. Going through the 4 days, you definitely will feel differences in your gait. This I can pretty much guarantee. The aspect in terms of the improvement, one is how you feel a change when you do it in some type of a session like this, sort of an immediate difference. And then how do you take certain aspects of it when you're walking daily and notice for myself, I can notice I do this if I push a little bit more, if I take the pelvis a little bit more, and you'll see this helps your walking spontaneously during the day that you can use it in different ways. We have to look into the different directions of the feet. We have to deal with the ankles. So this is how I will approach it. And then we have to enter it aspects of the rotation and then see how each of these aspects go into the gait cycle, okay? In terms of the practitioners' work that we would do in the hands-on, this will be very interesting because then we'll be able to clearly see, when you look at a person lying on the table, how their knees, how their legs, how their head is organized related to these planes of motion and how to specifically affect it when the person is on the table. I look forward to seeing many of you. I will do my best to present the topic as thoroughly as I can for the 4 days, if you're joining either for the morning or for the morning and the afternoon. Stay healthy, stay well. Thank you. Bye-bye.